Kia ora. Welcome to the National War Memorial in Wellington, where just in front of the Hall of Memories lie the remains of a warrior son of Aotearoa, New Zealand. A young man who set off on a brave, adventurous journey to Europe to play his part in World War I. He died serving his country, one of the 30,360 New Zealanders who've given their lives in war. And he was buried in a grave in northern France. And on his headstone, underneath the carved fern leaf, were the simple words, "An unknown New Zealand soldier." And then, almost a century later, we realized we'd have to ask him to make one more journey, back to his homeland, Te Hokinga Mai. It was a journey that would bring back many memories and pride and gratitude for all those who, without thought of self, have taken up arms to defend people in danger. To help us honor them, we needed our unknown warrior to be here among us in this special, sacred place. And so, on the 13th of May 2003, this site was blessed as we prepared for his homecoming. Early on that bright, chill morning, parliamentary and civic leaders joined defence chiefs, RSA representatives and a tri-service guard of honour to support Te Atiawa Kaumatua Sam Jackson in preparing the place where our unknown warrior will lie.
Te whakamauai, te Māori tuatahi, te Māori tuarua, te Māori tuatoru, ko te Māori tuafu. Ko te Māori tuarima, ko te Māori tuon, ko te Māori atu matau e ngā. He tue. Kauhanga tia ta tapuai anu ku ta tapuai.
To make it easier for people to come to pay their respects, the tomb is to be outside rather than inside the Hall of Memories, in a place which already carries a sense of honour and sacredness. The ceremony is completed by a blessing from Principal Defence Chaplain, the Reverend Julian Wagg.
Almighty God, Lord of creation, with mighty hand and outstretched arm, you reign with glory throughout our nation. We bless this site in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. We pray for all concerned with its construction.
And in the spring of 2004, some of our servicemen and women set off for the other side of the world, for Longueval in France, their mission to bring back a fallen comrade, our unknown warrior. His remains have been taken from the cemetery near Longueval and in the presence of Defence Chief Air Marshal Bruce Ferguson, sealed in a casket for the return home.
It was very emotional to see the remains of one of our soldiers who died here and represents some 12,000 others who are also buried here. So I addressed the soldier, his remains, and I asked that he bring the spirit of all of the New Zealanders here back to home with us and with him. And I do look on him as being their guardian for now, forever, and I also look on people of New Zealand being his guardian. So, and I told him that.
On November the 6th, 2004, a cool autumn day in the northern French town of Beauvais, the Tri-Service Guard arrives at the Commonwealth War Graves Commission which looks after the graves of thousands of Commonwealth servicemen and women. The Guard has come to claim our warrior back from the Commission's keeping. They'll cloak his casket with our ensign to signify that it will be kept under the watchful care of New Zealand servicemen and women until it reaches the resting place prepared for the warrior at home. But before that journey can begin, the warrior and his companions must be farewelled. The French military and the people of Longueval keep a special place in their hearts for the thousands of Kiwis who twice last century came to help them defend their homeland. They gather at the cemetery where so many of those young men lie to say to the warrior and to those who'll take him home, bon voyage, adieu.
Peloton, observe, armes! Portez, armes!
For almost 90 years ago, sons of Aotearoa journeyed across the world to uphold the noble cause of justice, liberty, and peace. The adventure these young men undertook is now etched in the history of our nation's respect for the rights of all people to the dignity of freedom and justice. Let us now prepare our hearts and minds that we may with due solemnity remember the enormity of their gift to us. For our country, Aotearoa, New Zealand, the loss of a young generation. For families throughout New Zealand, the loss of a loved one, or the return of someone who was injured or scarred, and for all, the gift of precious peace. May our willingness to honour their memory be witnessed in our acts of justice for all who seek peace and freedom today. We will return our warrior home to Wellington, New Zealand. And on Armistice Day, November the 11th, 2004, we will bury him in the National War Memorial. May he rest in peace.
Then, yet again, wreaths are laid, symbols of thanks and remembrance from soldiers, sailors, Air Force men and women of New Zealand and France, of yesterday and today, honouring our unknown warrior and the thousands of his comrades who will stay here forever.
Guard of Honour. General salute. Present! Out!
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
Guard of Honour. Shoulder! Out!
Peloton, observe, armes! Portez, armes!
Everybody, slow! Ha!
General salute. Present! Out!
Observe, armes! Présentez, armes!
And now, accompanied by a unique New Zealand harmony of Celtic and Polynesian sounds, the homeward journey can begin. For the people of Longueval, the departure is marked by a most unusual sight. An escort of toa, Maori warriors, standing guard in the countryside of France. The warrior has left now on his last long journey to the other side of the world, but future visitors will know that he lay here for 90 years. You know, a homecoming, especially after a long absence, can produce even more tears than a farewell. As our most famous song says, "When you return, you'll find me waiting here." And we were waiting when the unknown warrior came home. It took just 4 days to carry our warrior from Longueval in France to Wellington, New Zealand, and from autumn to spring. He's welcomed by senior military officers, a tri-service honor guard, and a Defence Force Kapahaka group.
Everybody, slow! Ha!
Through the solemn protocols of military honors and traditional porphyry comes a sense of gladness that after 90 years, the warrior has left the misty plains of northern France and returned to his own land. Encircled by the wind-swept hills of his capital city, his comrades carry him amongst the sights and sounds of home. Through all the ceremonies in France and the long homeward flights, the unknown warrior had been in the sole care of the men and women of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. But now it was time for them to share him, time for us to have the chance to welcome him and to pay our respects. At noon on November the 10th, 2004, the casket arrives at Parliament Buildings in Wellington. In a few minutes, the armed services will complete the first part of this demanding assignment when they hand over to civilian authorities, the Governor-General, the Speaker of the House, the Prime Minister and parliamentarians, the casket which they've brought with such care all the way from France. Tomorrow, the chiefs of staff, the bearer party and escorts will return to take the unknown warrior to his tomb at the National War Memorial. He'll spend today and tonight in Parliament, where he's greeted below the great steps by a general salute, a haka pōwhiri and karanga. Here, in the Legislative Council chamber, the warrior will lie in state so we can pay our respects. His bearers, all warrant officers, Harema and Leeming of the Royal New Zealand Navy, Wilson and McLean, New Zealand Army, and Moratti and True of the RNZAF, will lay his casket gently on the catafalque and leave him there, watched over every moment by vigil guards until they return to collect him tomorrow.
Head, balance.
Welcoming the warrior into Parliament are people who have themselves served our country in war and peace. They will offer their tributes as soon as the Royal New Zealand Navy personnel have mounted the first vigil guard.
Vigil will take post. Take post. Vigil, outwards, 2. Vigil, reverse, up.
The first wreath is laid on behalf of the Queen by Governor-General Dame Sylvia Cartwright and her husband Peter. The unknown warrior's medals span 90 years of service. The 1914-15 Star, the British War Medal, the Victory Medal, New Zealand War Service Medal and New Zealand Operational Service Medal. Prime Minister Helen Clark lays her wreath from the government and people of New Zealand. from the Royal New Zealand RSA, its highest award, the Badge in Gold, struck appropriately from the original die used for those returning from World War I. And also from the RSA, the first of hundreds of poppies which will be laid here over the next 22 hours. Lying in state is an honour accorded to those who've given outstanding service to the nation. As people come to offer thanks before the casket, they're thanking all those whom the unknown warrior represents, the men and women who've stepped forward when asked to take up arms in our defence. Over the 22 hours, people stand in queues waiting for a moment with their warrior. Young and old of all races, bringing a poppy, a memory of a friend or a family member, a prayer, a welcome home, and recording their words of gratitude for service and sacrifice. At 10 a.m. on Armistice Day, the entire nation got the chance to say farewell. It was just 20 hours ago that the unknown warrior was carried the other way into Parliament, into the Legislative Council chamber, where over that time he's been greeted, farewelled by thousands of Wellingtonians. And now he begins the last stage of that long journey home as the bearers take him through the Great Hall of Parliament out towards the main exit, led by the Principal Defence Chaplain, Colonel Julian Ragg, and he'll be greeted by the Karanga.
Let's go, party. General salute. Retreat! Ah!
So he makes his way down the steps of Parliament, and having saluted him, the honorary pallbearers, the senior serving officers of New Zealand's armed forces, move alongside this man who represents those fallen comrades of so long ago.
Let's go, party. Reverse! Ah! Let's go, party. We're going to the right to column of roots. Right! Ha!
The tri-service escort, the men and women who will carry him through the streets of Wellington to the National War Memorial must first deliver him to the Cathedral of St. Paul, only 50 yards away. But I suppose now, as they move through the forecourt, it's very obvious that the unknown warrior, after those long, long years away in the Northern Hemisphere, has come home. Home to a southern spring. And Alison, I guess what he left behind was a chill autumn.
A very chill autumn it was, and over the Somme there were the mists of the season. It really was a season of mists and some mellow fruitfulness. It was a beautiful time. We had sun breaking through the cloud, and he did come from a place though where the leaves were turning. Some of the trees were already bare on the horizon, but he's come home. He's come home to spring.
And very much to Aotearoa. Cabbage trees to his left, Harakeke ahead of him, Pohutakawa not yet in flower, surrounding the Parliament forecourt. But some echoes too, elm trees now in their spring greenery, and very soon as he moves between the rows of cadets who've come from far away to salute him, he'll go past roses just coming into bloom. And as we look from behind, for those of you who know the capital, we look behind King Dick's Memorial, our camera showing us the Cathedral of St. Paul waiting, standing high up to the left of Parliament. And inside assembled more than 1,200 members of the Royal New Zealand Returned and Services Association, diplomatic representatives, distinguished citizens from up and down our country. The clergy choir have just arrived. And this is a cathedral with a very special connection with all things military. There you can see on the northern wall the Chunuk Bair Memorial, and on the left-hand side, although we can't make them out here, we'll be hearing them later. They're the words written by Colonel Malone to his wife just before that last fatal battle that he undertook on Chunuk Bair. And we're looking right now at a piece of stone that was brought here by Dean Michael Brown. Came from Anzac Cove in Gallipoli. Military connection reinforced, of course, by the colours which will hang over the doorway through which the unknown warrior will be carried, the Great West Door. And there they are, the Queen's colours of the 75th Squadron of RAF and other important colours of New Zealand military forces.
It's probably worth saying at this point that although, of course, our soldier that we commemorate here today comes from the First World War, the Western Front, and we're looking at memorials from that First World War, he represents all wars, he represents all soldiers wherever they served, in Greece and Crete and North Africa and Italy.